A president is the leader of a country or a division or part of a country, typically a republic, a democracy, or a dictatorship. The title, president, is sometimes used by extension for leaders of other groups, including corporate entities. Etymologically, a president is one who presides. Originally, the term referred to the presiding officer of a ceremony or meeting, but today it most commonly refers to an executive official. Among other things, president today is a common title for the heads of state of most republics, whether presidential republics, semi-presidential republics or parliamentary republics. Title. The title president is derived from the Latin pre, before, plus sedere, to sit. As such, it originally designated the officer who presides over or sits before a gathering and ensures that debate is conducted according to the rules of order. Early examples are from the universities of Oxford and Cambridge and the founding president of the Royal Society, William Brouncker, in 1660. This usage survives today, and the title of such officers is President of the Board of Trade and Lord President of the Council in the United Kingdom, as well as President of the Senate. The officiating priest at certain Anglican religious services, too, is sometimes called the President, in this sense. However, the most common modern usage is as the title of a head of state in a republic. In pre-revolutionary France, the president of a parliament evolved into a powerful magistrate, a member of the so-called noblesse de robe, with considerable judicial as well as administrative authority. The name referred to his primary role of presiding over trials and other hearings. In the 17th and 18th centuries, seats in the parliaments, including presidencies, became effectively hereditary, since the holder of the office could ensure that it would pass to an heir by paying the crown a special tax known as the paulette. The post of first president, however, could only be held by the king's nominees. The parliaments were abolished by the French Revolution. In modern France, the chief judge of a court is known as its president. The first usage of the word president to denote the highest official in a government was during the Commonwealth of England. After the abolition of the monarchy, the English Council of State, whose members were elected by the House of Commons, became the executive government of the Commonwealth. The Council of State was the successor of the Privy Council, which had previously been headed by the Lord President. Its successor, the Council of State, was also headed by a Lord President, the first of which was John Bradshaw. However, the Lord President alone was not head of state, because that office was vested in the council as a whole. The modern usage of the term president to designate a single person who is the head of state of a republic can be traced directly to the United States Constitution of 1787, which created the office of President of the United States. Previous American governments had included presidents, but these were presiding officers in the older sense, with no executive authority. It has been suggested that the executive use of the term was borrowed from early American colleges and universities, which were usually headed by a president. British universities were headed by an official called the Chancellor, while the chief administrator held the title of Vice-Chancellor. But America's first institutions of higher learning didn't resemble a full-sized university so much as one of its constituent colleges. A number of colleges at Cambridge University featured an official called the President. The head, for instance, of Magdalen College, Cambridge, was called the Master and his second the President. The first president of Harvard, Henry Dunster, had been educated at Magdalen. Some have speculated that he borrowed the term out of a sense of humility, considering himself only a temporary placeholder. The presiding official of Yale College, originally a rector, became president in 1745. A common style of address for presidents, Mr. President, is borrowed from British parliamentary tradition, in which the presiding Speaker of the House of Commons is referred to as Mr. Speaker. Coincidentally, this usage resembles the older French custom of referring to the president of a parliament as Monsieur le Président. a form of address that in modern France applies to both the President of the Republic and to chief judges. Similarly, the Speaker of the Canadian House of Commons is addressed by francophone parliamentarians as Monsieur, Madame Présidente. In Pierre de Laclosse's novel Les Liaisons Dangereuses of 1782, the character identified as Madame la Présidente de Tourvel is the wife of a magistrate in a parlement. The fictional name Tourvel refers not to the parlement in which the magistrate sits, but rather, in imitation of an aristocratic title, to his private estate. Once the United States adopted the title of President for its Republican head of state, many other nations followed suit. Haiti became the first presidential republic in Latin America when Henry Christophe assumed the title in 1807. Almost all of the American nations that became independent from Spain in the early 1810s and 1820s chose a U.S.-style president as their chief executive. The first European president was the president of the client Republic of Revolutionary France, the Italian Republic of 1802, Napoleon Bonaparte. The first African president was the president of Liberia, while the first Asian president was the president of the Republic of China. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the powers of presidencies have varied from country to country. The spectrum of power has included presidents for life and hereditary presidencies to ceremonial heads of state. Presidents in the countries with a democratic or representative form of government are usually elected for a specified period of time and in some cases may be re-elected by the same process by which they are appointed, i.e., in many nations, periodic popular elections. The powers vested in such presidents vary considerably. Some presidencies, such as that of Ireland, are largely ceremonial, whereas other systems vest the president with substantive powers such as the appointment and dismissal of prime ministers or cabinets, the power to declare war, and powers of veto on legislation. In many nations the president is also the commander-in-chief of the nation's armed forces, though once again this can range from a ceremonial role to one with considerable authority. Presidential systems in states with a presidential system of government. The president exercises the functions of head of state and head of government, i.e., she or he directs the executive branch of government. Presidents in this system are either directly elected by popular vote or indirectly elected by an electoral college or some other democratically elected body. In most U.S. states, each elector is committed to voting for a specified candidate determined by the popular vote in each state, so that the people, in voting for each elector, are in effect voting for the candidate. However, for various reasons the numbers of electors in favor of each candidate are unlikely to be proportional to the popular vote. Thus, in 4 close U.S. elections, the candidate with the most popular votes still lost the election. In Mexico, the president is directly elected for a 6-year term by popular vote. The candidate who wins the most votes is elected president even without an absolute majority. The president may never get another term. The 2006 Mexican elections had a fierce competition. The electoral results showed a minimal difference between the two most voted candidates, and such difference was just about the 0.58% of the total vote. The Federal Electoral Tribunal declared an elected president after a controversial post-electoral process. In Brazil, the president is directly elected for a 4-year term by popular vote. A candidate has to have more than 50% of the valid votes. If no candidates achieve a majority of the votes, there is a runoff election between the two candidates with most votes. Again, a candidate needs a majority of the vote to be elected. In Brazil, a president cannot be elected to more than 2 consecutive terms, but there is no limit on the number of terms a president can serve. Many South American, Central American, and African nations follow the presidential model. Semi-presidential systems. A second system is the semi-presidential system, also known as the French system. In this system, as in the parliamentary system, there are both a president and a prime minister, but unlike the parliamentary system, the president may have significant day-to-day power. For example, in France, when his party controls the majority of seats in the National Assembly, the president can operate closely with the parliament and prime minister, and work towards a common agenda. When the National Assembly is controlled by his opponents, however, the president can find himself marginalized, with the opposition party prime minister exercising most of the power. Though the prime minister remains an appointee of the president must obey the rules of parliament, and select a leader from the House's majority-holding party. Thus, sometimes the president and prime minister can be allies, sometimes rivals. The latter situation is known in France as cohabitation. Variants of the French semi-presidential system, developed at the beginning of the Fifth Republic by Charles de Gaulle, are used in France, Romania, Sri Lanka and several post-colonial countries which have emulated the French model. Parliamentary systems. Another system is the parliamentary republic, where the presidency is largely ceremonial. Countries using this system include Israel, Ireland, Malta, Italy, Austria, Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, Turkey, Iceland, India, Pakistan, Singapore, Germany and Greece. Collective presidency. Only a tiny minority of modern republics do not have a single head of state. Some examples of this are Switzerland, where the headship of state is collectively vested in the 7-member Swiss Federal Council, although there is also a president of the Confederation, who is a member of the Federal Council elected by the Federal Assembly for a year, the Captain's Regent of San Marino elected by the Grand and General Council. In the former Soviet Union, while the real power was exercised by the General Secretary of the Communist Party, the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet executed powers of collective head of state, and its chairman was often called president. In the West, Yugoslavia after the death of Josip Broz Tito, Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, National Council of Government, Junta of National Reconstruction in Nicaragua, dictatorships. In dictatorships, the title is frequently taken by self-appointed or military-backed leaders. Such is the case in many states. Idi Amin in Uganda, Mobutu Sese Seko in Zaire, Ferdinand Marcos in Philippines and Saddam Hussein in Iraq are some examples. Other presidents in authoritarian states have wielded only symbolic or no power, such as Cravero Lopes in Portugal and Joaquin Balaguer under the Trujillo era of the Dominican Republic. President for life is a title assumed by some dictators to try to ensure that their authority or legitimacy is never questioned. Ironically, most leaders who proclaim themselves president for life do not in fact successfully serve a life term. On the other hand, presidents like Alexandre Pétion, Rafael Carrera, Josip Broz Tito and François Duvalier died in office. Kim Il-sung was named eternal president of the republic after his death. Lucius Cornelius Sulla appointed himself in 82 BC to an entirely new office, Dictator Rei Publici Constituende Causa, which was functionally identical to the Dictatorate Regerende Causa except that it lacked any set time limit. Although Sulla held this office for over 2 years before he voluntarily abdicated and retired from public life. The second well-known incident of the leader extending his term indefinitely was Roman dictator Julius Caesar, who made himself perpetual dictator in 45 BC. His actions would later be mimicked by the French leader Napoleon Bonaparte, who was appointed first consul for life in 1802. Several presidents have ruled until their death, but they have not proclaimed themselves as president for life. For instance, Nicolae Ceausescu of Romania, who ruled until his execution. Presidential symbols as the country's head of state. In most countries the president is entitled to certain perquisites. and may have a prestigious residence, often a lavish mansion or palace, sometimes more than one, for symbols of office, such as an official uniform, decorations, a presidential seal, coat of arms, flag and other visible accessories, military honors such as guns, salutes, ruffles and flourishes, and a presidential guard. A common presidential symbol is the presidential sash, is worn by mostly Latin American presidents as a symbol of the presidency's continuity, and presenting the sash to the new president. Presidential chronologies: United Nations member countries in columns, other entities at the beginning. European Commission. List of presidents of European Union institutions. List of presidents of the Soviet Union.